The Volkswagen Amarok is looking to go out with a bang with this special edition off-road model. It's called the W580X and it follows along behind the other Walkinshaw engineered models that Volkswagen has been rolling out recently. Now this Amarok is very old and it's due to be replaced soon by a new model that they are co-developing with Ford. However, that hasn't stopped them from throwing some special gear at this model, and this is more aimed at off-road protection and capability. There's different wheels, there's different tires, there's a lot of protection going on underneath this thing, and I'm going to run you through all of those details today along with a full test drive to see what this thing is like. Let's get stuck into it. The first thing you'll notice about this W580X is probably the grille. This is shared with the W580 and 580S. It is designed by Walkinshaw, but there is a little bit of difference here. You've got a little 75 watt light bar mounted down below there. We've been mostly driving during the day with this, but apparently that throws around 1 lux at 300 meters, which is pretty decent for a light bar. But most of the important stuff is around to the side here. So I'll just show you these wheels and tires. This is a forged 18-inch alloy wheel and it's wrapped in a Pirelli Scorpion all-terrain tire. This is what they call a new generation. I would call it something like a hybrid, is what you see these days for an all-terrain. This is obviously better than the 20-inch wheels for off-roading, and these tires so far seem to be pretty quiet but also grippy off-road, so they might be a really nice combination for a lot of people. These wheels and tires are accommodated by flares. You'll see these things on other W580 models, and this also has an optional snorkel. It's not standard fitment, that is a sequel. It's almost like a genuine Volkswagen accessory range from Germany. They're meant to be really good quality products, and that looks to be quite nice, and it is quite noisy, but you'll get to that a little bit later. One thing I do really like about this is the rock sliders. They're mounted to the chassis, engineered by Walkinshaw here in Australia, and they look to be the real deal. These will actually protect you quite nicely when you're off-road, and in my experience that is the first thing you will hit. Now, one thing I can't really show you at the moment from here, this grass is a little bit wet, but you've got protection underneath. There is a big plate under the diff, one under the transfer case, and one that sort of covers the engine and the steering as well. The front one is aluminium 4mm and the others are steel. They look to be really, really well designed and engineered, so hopefully we'll be able to give those a bit of a workout later. And of course you've got some custom decals down the side here, just so you can let everyone know that you've spent the big bucks on a W580X. And it is big bucks indeed. The starting price for an Amarok W580X starts from $78,890 before on-road costs. And with the optional snorkel and ergo comfort seats that we've got here, you're actually looking at $83,970, once again before on-road costs. This puts the W580X at a much higher price than the Nissan Navara Pro 4X Warrior and Ford Ranger FX4 Max, for example. And it is even knocking on the door of the Ford Ranger Raptor. The next generation Raptor, for example, has a starting price of $85,490. The Amarok W580X starts life as a 580 Highline model before getting the Walkinshaw treatment. Just like the W580 and W580S models, this one gets modified and enhanced on an Australian production line for our market only. Inside, there are some subtle changes like an embroidered headrest and build number plate near the gear shifter. However, it's otherwise the same old Amarok we all know and love. These days though, it is really starting to feel its age in some respects. One thing that doesn't feel old and weary is the engine. This is a 3-litre V6 turbo diesel which makes 190 kilowatts with 200 kilowatts available for short periods through the overboost function. And there's also 580 Newton meters available, and that is on tap in a meaty torque band between 1400 and 3000 RPM. This all runs through an 8-speed automatic gearbox with full-time 4-wheel drive and a locking rear differential. But just like other Amaroks with only 2 pedals, this one has no low-range transfer case. This Amarok really is the Benjamin Button of 4-wheel drive utes. It's really old. It dates back to 2011, and that makes it clearly the oldest in the segment, but it still is really good. Volkswagen clearly did a really good job of engineering this Amarok way back then, and it still stands true today that this does a lot of things quite well and even better than a lot of other Nutes that are quite newer. The ride quality in this W580X, it's a little bit different. The engineers from Walkinshaw told us that they did increase the damping force in these shock absorbers to better deal with things like off-road driving, corrugations, and that sort of thing. So for on-road driving that we've done so far, there is a little bit of firmness going on there. It doesn't have the sort of same suppleness that you'd get out of a Navara Warrior, for example, and obviously the Ford Ranger Raptor is on a completely different league to that. But the ride quality is good. We're on tyres that are an all-terrain tyre, but they're a really nice hybrid, so they're quiet, they grip the road quite well. And this Amarok, yes, it is old, but this still drives a lot better than most other utes out there. You can throw this thing through corners and it's actually quite enjoyable to drive. And something like a Navara, something like a Raptor even, can't really do that as well as this. And of course you've got V6 power under the bonnet. It's still smooth, it's still silky, runs through an 8-speed automatic gearbox, which does a fantastic job. And that really still is the major strength of this Amarok, and no doubt the main reason why a lot of people end up buying this ute. We've got an optional snorkel fitted to this model here. It's a cycle one, and it isn't a raised air intake. This looks like a fair income snorkel. We haven't done any water fording, but have a listen to this. Wind that up again. It's very, very noisy. Some people are either going to love that or it's going to annoy them quite a bit. There's a massive induction noise that comes through there as that V6 starts gulping in the air. So in terms of off-road driving, we did do a bit of stuff during this launch drive, but it was mostly fairly tame. There wasn't much going on in terms of challenge that really threw anything at this Amarok meaningfully. It handled the drive we did quite well, but it could do a lot more, and mostly that comes down to the protection that this thing has. The suspension, the front has been lifted up, the rear has not, so it's almost just been leveled out instead of having an actual lift. But the main strength comes from the protection. So you've got a bash plate under the diff, a bash plate under the transfer case, a nice bash plate at the front as well, and of course those rock sliders. So while this Amarok doesn't have anything like a low range transfer case, it's got an off-road mode, and although I prefer my four-wheel drives with a transfer case, you got to take your hat off to this thing because it is very capable off-road. We haven't had the chance to actually test out that protection equipment during this drive, but stay tuned because we'll do that in the future. The fact of the matter is, this is a very old ute. It's over a decade old. It's due for replacement and there is one coming soon, but you still kind of have to take your hat off to this Amarok for doing such a good job even towards the end of the line. Now, one thing I don't perhaps like is the fact that this is still very expensive. You're looking at a before on-road price of nearly $80,000 for a ute that is really old. Normally, when they get towards the end of the line, the value starts to increase because they drop prices. That just hasn't happened in this case. But even as it stands, this thing still does stuff that other utes, much newer utes, couldn't do. It steers really nicely, it's a wonderful thing to drive, and that V6 is still a really strong point. This W580X model, I do like the additions that have been put on here, and this will suit a lot of people who want a ute that's got more capability straight off the showroom floor, but still has a really nice driving demeanor. You're going to be able to take this thing out into the bush, knock it around a little bit. You're not going to cave in your sills, you're not going to puncture the rear diff. That's a pretty nice thing to know, but you can still drive this thing to and from work. It's nice and composed, quiet, powerful, all those things. So even though it is at the end of the line, there's only 600 models of this thing, so there's probably still going to be a fair queue for it. As always, thank you for watching this video. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Hit the bell notification button as well so you stay up to tune with all of our latest videos, and head over to Drive.com.au for the full review. Thanks for watching.